Right. Well, it is coming up to 11:45 on Saturday, the 11th of July, and I'm sitting here with a new friend, and I'm going to let him introduce himself. And I've asked him to speak on this crisis that's afflicting Norwich and the whole rest of the country. But I want his point of view about when I walked into, when I bumped into him, let's say. One of the things that struck me is that he said that he's been in the army for 20 plus years, but he's never seen anything as weird, as strange as this. And that made me think this is something worth sharing with all of you. So I'm going to pass it over to my good friend, Geoff. What's your full name, if you want to introduce?
Yeah, my name's Geoff Fisher.
And it goes in there.
Yeah, so my name's Geoff Fisher. Basically, I was born in Manchester in 1965. I was a one-parent family, and from there I literally grew up in a place called Hume on the edge of Moss Side in Manchester, and I have absolutely no idea why throughout my entire life of young life, no idea why I always wanted to go into the armed forces. No one told me about the armed forces. I didn't know anybody in the armed forces. But for whatever reason, I used to drive people absolutely bonkers as a child, because every game I wanted to play had to be based on an army game or something where everybody else wanted to play Lego or do all these different things. So I did have quite a few crazy moments in my life where people used to go, oh no, it's Geoff, we'll leg it, because all he's going to talk about is Army this, Air Force this, Navy that. So basically I grew up in Manchester. I literally got myself into a bit of martial arts, like all kids do, things like that. I did Thai boxing, which was very new then. That also sort of was in 1976. Thai boxing had just hit the UK. It was in a place called Deansgate in Manchester, with a really prominent guy at the time who had a small part in Batman, and his name was Master Sken.
Right.
And everyone nicknamed him Ken because no one could pronounce his full name, and I still can't to this day. So we'll call him Master Ken. And there was a couple of rival gyms, Toddies and so forth. From then, I then decided to... it wasn't long after that when I started to have a look at career choice, things like that. I wasn't very good at school. I didn't enjoy it. So again,
Which school did you
I went to, it was actually one of the supposedly most up-to-date schools of its time called Wright Robinson High. And it actually had its own swimming pool and everything in there, and sports facilities, which if you think in 1970s was very advanced. And funny enough, the badge that they used was very similar to the Olympic badge, which made you sort of like think to yourself, oh, look at us, we've got everything that everyone else. But like I said, didn't get on very well with school. I didn't think that they were very good at... I didn't get anything. I wasn't very that good. No, I got a few CS.
But you were good at sports.
Yeah. If you wanted me to put my hands on something, and I've since discovered that that's the way I learn best. If you ask me to sit down and study something and read it, there's a chance I might not get there. I'd need help with someone sort of like translating it in a way into physical. So I didn't really get on with school because it felt like it was a lot of theory. As I was progressing into secondary school, obviously my love for trying to get into the forces was growing and growing and growing. But what I found was nearly everybody around me was, what are you going to do when you grow up? Oh, I'm going to be a bricklayer. I'm going to work in a factory. I'm going to do this. And all the careers advice was about, literally all about that, i.e. industry. There was none for the forces. So if you wanted to go in the forces, you had to go and do the research yourself. Me, when I was 13, 14, I used to turn up at the recruitment agencies in the city centre. And in the end, I turned up that much and I couldn't join because I was too young, obviously. I was only 14 at the time. But they got so used to me standing outside and asking for information that they decided to give me a little part-time job, and that was to hand out the leaflets and sort out all of the little brochures in there, until eventually 2 years later I was old enough to join Boy Soldiers at 16. So I actually joined the Boy Soldiers, and I stayed in there for about 2 years, up until I was 17 and a half. And then I actually went into the Royal Air Force. During that time, as in the training, someone said to me, "Oh, we like you. There's something about you that we could use. Would you want to do something a bit different?" And I thought it was mainly because I looked tough. And I can absolutely tell you without a shadow of a doubt that was not the reason whatsoever. It was completely the opposite. So basically, by the time I was 18, I was already serving in Northern Ireland. I'd served in Northern Ireland for about 3 to 4 years. That took me from sort of like 1982 up to around about 1987. And then from there, I worked as a specialist working in embassies, working in protection, basically. And purely by accident, after about 4 or 5 years of doing that, and I travelled by that time, not long after that, sort of late 80s, Bosnia, Yugoslavia had basically broken up. So I went over there as a UN peacekeeper. And I was actually on a specialist unit that was on a protection. So our job was to protect people in general and enclaves, and hopefully no violence, which I absolutely loved. And it was a bit of a strange combination, really, because even though I wanted to be in the forces, I didn't really want to be in the forces to hurt anyone. I actually wanted to be in the forces to help people. Wow. And I was also given a great opportunity then, because our team medic got promoted and left, and they asked for a volunteer for someone to be a medic. So I ended up saying, "Oh, go on, I'll do it." And then from that led to me doing more and more medical, working in the Army and Air Force and Navy, and working with specialist units, setting up what we call crisis hospitals. So in Africa, for instance, we went to a place called Dakar in Africa, and we set up a little medical unit. And what I found fascinating and what opened my mind is, you look in Norwich right now and you see people doing their everyday things, shopping with a bag and clothes and warm and food and everything else. And from the times in Bosnia to Africa, one thing I realized is that we're not all equal. And not all of us have this. We don't all have plastic bags where we can go shopping. We don't all have the access to medicine. We don't all have even access to water, never mind our toileting, which we take for granted. And that opened my mind up a lot, especially in Africa, where we had people that would walk 200 to 300 miles to get to us to get treatment. And I found that like so eye-opening. And obviously on your travels, from the days of Northern Ireland to now, we always knew or had a plan. And we always had a backup plan and another backup plan. So we always had an idea what was in front of us and what the task was. The challenge was that if something didn't work, how can we work around it and make it work?
Dakar was your last?
That was one of the big places that I went to. One of my last places I've worked in. I've been to the Gulf.
Right.
I've worked in the Middle East. And so I had
did you retire?
I retired in 1998.
So what have you been doing since then?
Basically, I had a bit of a challenge then, because what happened then is I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I ended up going into the reserves, and then they employed me as a full-time instructor, as a teacher. So teaching, teaching reserve soldiers medical, how to become combat medics and first aid. And then since that, I've then got chatting to somebody. They were a carer, in mental health, looking after people in the community. And I thought, oh, that sounds okay. I need to break away from the forces somehow.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh, I'll go and see if I'm any good at that. So I got a part-time job because I was getting my pension from the forces. Got a part-time job helping mental health and looking after people in their own homes as a part-time. Yeah. And then my son, because as he was growing up, he was playing football. And then I met somebody at football and they said, well, if you like sport and you like your medical stuff, would you want to teach first aid or so forth doing that? And now I'm now a part-time instructor, tutor for England FA. So I actually teach new managers, new coaches, how to deal with football injuries part-time. And then via that, that's how I've ended up in my career that I'm in now, which is in retail, as in a new business. So.
And so there's this great statement that you made.
Yeah.
You've seen a lot in your life.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
You've seen nothing as weird, strange as this.
The thing is, what I absolutely can't fathom is I remember things in my time, and I'm sure everyone else has remembered them. We had recessions. We had flu viruses, but everybody just seemed to get on and it was no big worry or anything. When it was Northern Ireland, whether it was the Gulf, we were told who we needed to look at, who we were to communicate with. There was always a structure, always something tangible that was there. You could physically see it. When Sizewell had that leak, I didn't hear the country going into lockdown. I didn't hear like everyone must shut up, don't talk to anyone, everyone looking. And now, having seen all that, I've seen explosions, I've seen starvation, I've seen injury, I've seen everything. But for me, the coronavirus and how every person that you see is reacting to it differently. 1 minute, one person is standing 2 meters away from someone and saying, don't come near me, don't come near me. And then they'll go into Aldi's and they'll push past you to get to the product. And I just find it's the most bizarre time in my entire life. I've never seen anything like it, and also where a government has actually turned around to people and say, don't go out. And a whole nation has virtually agreed. From shops shutting down to gyms. And so I don't know.
What would you say would be the more appropriate policy response?
I think what they've done now, which is if they'd have opened up and put hand sanitizers, masks, and everything from, I think we could have kept the economy going. I think, because one thing to me, which I think's been missed massively, and I'm really worried about the statistics when they come out, because I don't think they're out yet, but I'm positive, is how many deaths have actually happened that are non-coronavirus related that could have been prevented if the people had been doing their everyday, that person who something's gone seriously wrong in their life and they're suicidal. Sometimes someone can be saved just by somebody talking to someone. How many people are we, what's the increase going to be like on that? What's the increase going to be like on people actually leaving the house now that are not nervous? How many more people are going to stay at home?
Do you think mental health issues are...
I think it's definite. I mean, we've already got a society of younger people now that are opening up and talking about mental health issues such as anxiety and stress. And once will it happen? I don't know. But at some point, I'm hoping coronavirus was a history, because this is history in the making. Because will we ever see? We might see it again, the lockdown at the moment, because we're not quite through it, but maybe in 2 years' time, after everything's done, will we ever see anything like this again? I don't know. But this is the young people's, this is something they will talk about for the rest of their lives. This will be something they'll be sat with their grandchildren saying, you'll never believe what happened in 2020. And I do think, I think the lockdown has probably caused a lot more challenges than meets the eye. And I think if we balanced out the statistics of people dying with COVID, because there is a big difference with and of, and people dying outside of COVID, I think the ratio is going to be awful on the side of people that are mentally challenged. So we're already low. We're already not going out. And some people which did venture out, which had that nervous disposition, that anxiety, I wonder whether this has just exacerbated it, made it 10 times worse. And now that person who actually did get up and go to the shop, even though it was a struggle, will they now Corona? So for me, it is definitely, out of everything I've ever seen in my entire life, from being a child to being in Africa to being in Bosnia to being in the Gulf, this is definitely the strangest time in my life.
Yeah. So do you think that not enough is being done by the government and by healthcare workers and others to minimise the degree to which fear and panic are gripping ordinary people?
I don't think they're doing enough to alleviate it. Yeah. I think, if anything, they're increasing it.
Yeah.
Because you've now seen Boris Johnson, about 20 weeks too late, wearing a mask in a shop.
Right. Now, that's another question. Do you think that the fear and the anxiety surrounding this issue can actually make you more vulnerable to catching the virus? Does it lower your immunity system?
I think anxiety and stress can make you more vulnerable to anything.
Objectively, physically,
yeah.
It can actually reduce your immunity.
Yeah.
So you think that?
Yeah, because it's always well known that if we're tired, stress can create illnesses. You know, you can go and I reckon there'll be a massive increase, for instance, in one particular one, IBS, irritable bowel disease. Now, some people have got that because obviously they were born and that was the way. But actually, it's increased awfully by stress and anxiety.
Why specifically IBS?
No, I was just thinking about it because it could also happen in people with, because IBS is a high end one actually for anxiety and stress, and if you can get it down, you can reduce the symptoms. You may not get rid of it, but you can definitely.
It's very stress related.
Yes.
When you say high end, you mean that it's one of the relationships between disease and stress.
Yeah. So is blood pressure, high blood pressure.
So you would predict that.
I think that'll go up.
Sorts of things that we go.
Yeah, I think we will. I think we will see people with high blood pressure. I think we'll see people with higher cholesterol rates.
And what about people who are already with, as you put it, mentally challenged, who already have conditions?
Some of these people
they're going to get much worse.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I don't think they're going to.
Homes and
I do.
Psychiatric wards.
Yeah.
You don't have the statistics yet. You would predict that.
I don't come from a background. It's just my own little bit. I've worked in care myself for about 10 years, and I have seen how difficult it is to access help anyway. And now I think we're looking at 10 times, 15 times more challenges because
10 to 15 times.
I think so.
Really?
Yeah.
Of that order of magnitude.
Yeah, I do. I think we're looking. I won't be surprised if there wasn't a 10 to 15% increase in suicides, because no one's recording it.
That's true. Yeah. Going back to what you said about the mentally challenged people. With your experience in care, it's been what you said, 10 years.
Yeah.
Would you say what?
I'm actually a qualified Care Quality Commission manager, still registered.
I see. What degree of of responsibility would you attribute to the environmental factors for people having mental health issues, as opposed to intrinsic things that it's just their predisposition? If you had to sort of make a percentage, what percentage would you say is caused by the environment as opposed to?
Yeah, I think 30% is more where someone's born with it, or
Only 30%.
yeah, 30-40%.
30% is
And nearly every other mental issue is from an outside influence.
really.
So whether it's abuse, whether it's PTSD, whether it's
Schizophrenia, bipolar disorder.
yeah, that's the 30%. Because
that's something intrinsic.
Yeah, because
You don't think environmental factors.
no,
have much to do with that.
I think there are some environmental challenges where because of the way we are, everyone needs an answer. I do think the medical world is forced into a position that it doesn't really want to be in, and that is putting everyone into a certain box. Rather than being able to say to you, do you know something? Why don't you just come round? Why don't we just go and have a chat, have a cup of tea every day, or a cup of coffee, and just meet people and see how you get on? Instead, they're very quick now to diagnose you with something that, ADHD, for instance. How much is attention deficit disorder? How fast has that gone up in diagnosis? 5-10 years ago, no one had ever heard of it. 3 to 4 years ago, 1 in 5 kids.
Right.
You talk to parents now. A parent comes in here. I guarantee you, if they're looking to get some help, they'll go, "Oh, you don't know if you've got anything for a child that's got ADHD, do you?" Rather than saying, "Actually, my child is quite hyperactive and needs a lot of stimulation." And
the same as with bipolar, isn't it? So many people are being diagnosed.
Yeah, I think it's overdiagnosed.
Yeah.
Because I do think the medical world, you are pushed into. Can you imagine going to your GP and you say to him, "Do you know something? I've had a really bad week. I'm feeling really down." And rather than the GP say, "I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll give you a couple of antidepressants and see how you get on for 2 weeks," they turn around to you and say, "For goodness sakes, everybody has a bad week. Why don't you just go home, have a cup of coffee, go and speak to your friends and family and come back in?" They'd be fired on the spot. You can't do that because we have to have an answer. And that's what I think the challenge is with coronavirus now. One of my big things with coronavirus right now is I think they were told prior to coronavirus hitting this country, I think they had a quite a large world meeting with other leaders, and all of them were fearful that we were going to lose millions of people. I think it's worked out that it's not that, but now they can't just turn around and say, "Actually, do you know something? We've predicted wrong." Because imagine if they turn around and say, "Actually, we got it wrong. Not that many people will die." And then in 2 years' time, something does happen and they say we're going into lockdown. Everyone go, "Well, you got it wrong then." So I'm a little bit...
But we're all waiting to see what's going to happen in America, because now the number of infections is constantly increasing, but the deaths are relatively low. Proportionately. So
yeah,
that's a big question mark.
That's one of the biggest question marks I've had. And this is my big thing where I think that the TV, some of the news has been... I used to love GMTV, for instance. I used to love Piers Morgan, and I thought he was quite thing. But I actually think he's been one of the biggest instigators of fear with coronavirus from the start to finish, because they've emphasised how many people have died in care homes.
Right.
But what they've not done is, what was the average death rate in a care home prior to corona? And I'll tell you exactly what. It was never truly recorded, so the newspapers wouldn't have had that figure.
Right.
But the chances are, up and down the country, it was more than likely 7,000 to 10,000 a week, or 7,000 to 10,000 a month, which is actually below the normal coronavirus death. And last month, we were below the average annual death rate for the last 5 years.
Oh, really?
So I'm a bit sceptical. to be
So
honest.
why don't we finish on a positive note?
Yep.
We had a great chat.
Yep.
Give us something really positive from your experience in the army.
Yep.
That you can help the listeners, whoever's going to hear this. What would you say? The mental attitude we should have to this post-corona?
One of the best things that I've learned is you should never concentrate on the past because you will never make the future better. And I've learned that if we keep blaming a society, today's society, for 100 years ago society, nothing will ever change. And one of the best things I've also learned is when you chat to someone, treat them, no matter whether they're poor or rich, treat them as you want to be treated yourself, and you'll be surprised on how many really good people there are actually out there. Because I was actually skeptical being in the army. I thought everybody I meet is going to be against me, or if I went to the Middle East, they'd hate me. If I went to Africa, they'd hate. And actually, no, it's completely the opposite. In actual fact, the positive is 90% of people are good people. And I would say take your time out of your day and try and make someone smile as a goal every day, and it'll make you mentally well.
Very, very good advice, Geoff. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you very much. Cheers.